the NYX Tanker Boot Black Chromexcel. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Dale, Dale's Leatherworks. Wherever you're located on this non-spinning realm that we call the flat earth, I hope you're having a wonderful flat day. You know, I get this question sometimes from people. It's like, wait, Dale, if the earth is flat, then why when I look up into the sky, the moon is round and Saturn's round and Mars is round? It's like, no, sorry, they're all flat. They're not even real. Those objects you see in the sky, that's a hologram, okay? And birds are fake too. Birds are just government drones sent to spy on you. So that, all right, anyways. So enough with flat earth. Let's tap into these tanker boots that are definitely not flat. In fact, these are the least flat boot you will ever find on the market. That's not true, but, and so you might recognize these other two boots from a recent history series that I did. These are my Eastman tanker boots designed by my buddy John Lofgren for the Eastman sportswear / outerwear company. And then these are my old World War II relics that I procured, I believe, from one of the Militaria websites that I subscribe to that sell a lot of really cool old war relics and things like that. And so I hopped on and bought these. I believe these are original war era tanker boots. So if you're interested in that video, I will leave it on one of the cards at the end of the video. You can check that out because that was a lot of fun to make. Obviously, you can see these bad boys have been getting a lot of wear. They are breaking in beautifully. Yeah, you can see on the vamp there and on the sole, U.S. Army outsole, getting tons of wear, and they're super comfortable. I just love these. So huge thanks to my buddy Joe Copeland, who had these routed to me to review and to get on camera. So these are going to be the NYX tanker boots in black Teacore Chromexcel. I know Teacore, it sounds like a confusing term, like, oh, what's a Teacore leather? It's very simple. When you look at the raw edge of the leather, meaning when you're not looking at the leather surface, when you're looking at the raw edge, you see how it's natural there. That means that as the black pigment wears off, it's going to expose these natural undertones here. You also see it on the pull tab. And this is such a gnarly build. I actually recognize these buckles right out the gate. I use these same buckles. These are raw Japanese brass buckles from the buckle guy. This is very expensive hardware. I want to say these are like $4 a buckle. I use the same exact ones on my bag because they're just the hardiest, the sturdiest. They're not lightweight, they're not chintzy, they're not cheap. But that said, this is the original NYX tanker boot. They've since refined this version to a more pragmatic pattern, and I'll get into that. But first and foremost, what is a tanker boot? Well, the tanker boot was designed by General George Patton in collaboration with the Daner company, I want to say somewhere in the 1930s, just a few years before World War II really kicked off. And what they needed was a boot that was laceless, because the laces in standard service boots could get caught and pose as a hazard while maneuvering throughout a tank, which is obviously loaded with tons of mechanical gear and equipment. It could pose as a hazard to the equipment and also to the user. If there's an emergency, the tank's about to explode, and you need the crew to perform an emergency egress or something like that, and your laces get caught on some of the gears, then you're not getting out of the tank, and that's that's the end of that. So to remedy that, what they did was they implemented boots that had these strap enclosure system instead of a lacing enclosure system. This particular model also performs very well when they're caked in mud. Think about it, if you've ever worn lace-up boots and you had them all muddy, you can't get the laces out, and especially if you're cold, you wouldn't be able to get them off. Like, they'd be caked in mud, and until you found a way to clean them up and get all that dirt and debris off of the eyelets, then you're pretty much stuck in those things, and that's a nightmare. Whereas with this lace-up system, it doesn't matter how much mud's on it, you can navigate these straps in and out and the boots off easily, and you could also get them back on regardless of how much debris is caked on there. So that's another huge advantage to the tanker boot design. So this is according to Nix. What are tanker boots? Tanker boots are a military boot style that was designed for and worn by tank crews. They've caught on for civilians as work boots and casual boots because of some of the qualities of the design. Tanker boots are halfway between pull-on boots and laced boots in that they have more support than pull-on boots but don't have laces. Equal parts, form, and function. Tanker boots are still in military service, as the purpose for the boot design still exists. Beyond use inside a tank, tankers are a great boot designed for someone who wants a tough boot that goes on and comes off more easily than a typical work boot. Tankers invented and then wore tanker boots. Tanker boots as a boot style were invented between the World Wars, a couple of years before the start of World War II, depending on how you define that. The history books mostly say the invasion of Poland, and therefore about 4 or so years before the USA entered the war. Tanker boots are very similar to the combat boots of the era, bearing a striking resemblance to Corcoran jump boots. The key difference is that instead of laces, tanker boots use a leather belt that wraps around the boot to fasten them. The boot was literally designed by tankers for tankers, with the design being a collaboration between Daner Boot Company and a son of a gun named George Patton. That's right, old blood and guts himself. Daner are still around, specializing mostly in equestrian boots, but also manufactures duty boots for police and military personnel. Patton, as it happens, came from the cavalry and started his career at the end of the mounted cavalry era. So that's mostly certainly how he knew about the company. The design priorities were to come up with a boot that was easy to get on and take off, offer more support than typical riding boots, but also be suited for life inside a tank. Laces could get caught on the machinery inside of the tank, so they're actually a safety hazard. A leather upper is more fire resistant than nylon or canvas boots, and the boots are easier to deal with when caked in mud. Tanker boots are also looser on feet than laced boots, which means tankers don't have any loss of circulation if they stay seated for long hours in the field, which is common in wartime, and they work. The tanker boots that our troops wore in World War II work so well that a tanker boot design of some kind has remained an issue for tank crews ever since, even into the present. Who can wear tanker boots? There are some rules in the military about who can wear tanker boots. As far as we could tell, Army regulations don't specifically forbid anyone from wearing them, but gives unit commanders latitude to prohibit specific boots or require certain boots for duty. So it would really depend on your unit specifically. Just because they're authorized in a blanket sense doesn't mean it's okay for you. Outside of military use, obviously anyone could wear tanker boots if they so choose, and a quality pair of tanker boots would be a great choice of work boots, motorcycle boots, or just for general wear. Are they comfortable? With quality construction, tanker boots are incredibly comfortable. They bridge the gap very well between a laced boot and a pull-on, making them comfortable and convenient, as well as having decent ankle support for a non-lacing boot. The heel block gives the boot good support and, if made correctly, provides all the arch support you'll need for all-day comfort. The straps allow you to set the heel into the heel cup, keeping the heel from lifting as you walk around, which is the classic failing of pull-on boots. The straps let you set the heel, giving you some ankle support but not quite the same amount as a laced boot. Lacing over the foot and going up the lower leg set the foot into the boot to support the ankle, so it won't quite be the same. They make an excellent most-purpose field boot, so long as you don't need the utmost of ankle support, and darned if they don't look great doing it. So key takeaways: tanker boots were literally designed for and worn by tank crews, but have become popular among civilians. These boots use leather belts instead of laces, which can become a workplace safety hazard. Tanker boots bridge the gap between pull-on and laced boots, providing more support than pull-on boots without the laces. Army tanker boots are designed to provide extra support, extra protection to the ankles, heels, and feet with a thicker sole and higher ankle than regular boots. They're easier to wear and remove, and looser on the feet for better circulation. And there's plenty more to come in this video, but real quick, this video is sponsored by none other than one of my favorite boot companies, Truman Boots. That's right, Truman Boots now has a loyalty program. It is a multi-tiered program that allows you to sign up, earn, and save. So you enter the silver tier after $500 spent, and you get 5% off stock and MTO boots. For gold, that's $1,000 spent, you get 10% off. Collector is $2,500 spent, you get 15% off. And all access is 20% off all stock and MTO boots, and that's once you cross the $5,000 threshold. Now, Vince has been kind enough to lend me my own promo code. That's promo code DALE for 10% off at checkout. So click that link in the description below and go shop around. Vince has a lot of exciting builds right now, including the Coyote Roughout Upland, the Brown Oiled Roughout Upland Mock Toe, the Mahogany Shrunken Bison Upland. They've got a lot of other amazing builds like Black Waxed Flesh, Stone Rambler, Coach Rambler, Natural Cypress, Black Cherry Shrunken Bison, Oxblood Double Shot, Black Cherry Shrunken Bison, Dark Olive Predator, China Blue Waxy Commander, Chiha. The list goes on, ladies and gentlemen. So, once again, click that link in the description below and use code DALE at checkout to save 10% off some of the best boots made in America. Alright, so Carl Morawski actually helped design the Nix Boots Tanker 2.0. So he says, the Tanker returns, fixing some issues which plagued the first version, which these are the first version to my knowledge. So we'll talk about some of the issues that the users had with this particular model. So Carl says, thankfully you don't have to operate a tank to enjoy these distinct boots, and Nix handmade boots out of Spokane, Washington make some of the best. The Heritage Tanker. The first tanker boot was designed as a collaboration between Nix Boots and Carl Morawski in a model known as the Heritage Tanker. This model featured some high-end elements like NOS cat paw heels, Biltrite half soles, and black Teacore leather. The end result was a stunning interpretation of the classic tanker boot. And yeah, that appears to be just like these ones that we have here. The main complaint about this boot was the lower section of lacing, which remained unclosed. Some owners developed their own methods of closing this section, including adding eyelets and laces and a leather section that snapped into place. Now, I assume what they're talking about here is this portion at the base, in between the eyelet facings, you see some puckering of the gusseted tongue coming out there. There's a lot more tongue than needs to be, a lot more material here, so I assume that's what they're talking about. This portion, I guess, was like kind of gaping open all the time. Maybe gaping isn't an appropriate word for me to use on a family-friendly channel. Quit being such an adolescent, Dale. But yeah, I could see that being an issue. And when you contrast that with these Eastmans, you see clearly they don't have that issue. The pattern is very well dialed in. So this is more of like a prototype run. And, you know, this is probably the first time Nix tried to build a tanker boot. And it's still a great design. I mean, they're riding off their other models. They just traditionally hadn't made this pattern. You know, like, for example, my Nix Nobleman's Apothecary boot, this pattern's more of their traditional design, and obviously they've been nailing this design for decades now. The Tanker 2.0. When developing the next generation of Nix tanker boot, special care was given to the areas which customers voiced concerns about. In fact, the 2.0 isn't just a refresh of an existing model, it's an entirely new pattern. The most noticeable difference is the strap placement. Not only is the toe strap lower, yes, I see it. So the what they're calling the toe strap here is what I call the instep strap. And as you can see, yeah, now that I look at it, the instep strap should be ideally right here. And you can see that on the Eastman, the instep strap is placed much lower compared to here. Here it's basically placed at the ankle level, which is pretty high. Yeah, I would have moved this forward about an inch. I would have moved it forward personally. So I see what they're saying now. So they lowered that. So now the toe strap is lower, but both straps are now wider to allow more contact with the boot to help with support. Okay. I also notice on the new model, yeah, the buckles are now a lower profile to lessen the chance of a pant leg getting hung up on them. Then, of course, this is a brand new leather to talk about. The leather is from Horween Tannery in Chicago and is a waxed flesh in the color Ember. This is a NYX Handmade Boots exclusive that isn't available on any other NYX boot model or from any other manufacturer. Once these tankers are sold out, the leather may be an option for other NYX boots. NYX is focusing their efforts much more on refinement in 2024 and 2025 with cleaner stitching than I've seen from the brand before. The boots still have a handmade feel to them, but stitch lines are evenly spaced and accurate. Limited to only 50 pairs, these tankers won't be around for long, so if you want something truly unique, take a look at the NYX Karl Morawski Tanker Boots. And yes, I went and clicked that link, and no, they're no longer available. I think they went up in September and they probably sold out like within a week with only 50 pairs. Yeah, so it was the NYX Karl Morawski Ember Wax Tanker Pro 2.0. Working with our friend Karl Morawski, we've updated our classic Tanker Pro to have less flare out at the instep. The new pattern features all new vamp, upper, gusset, and strap patterns, making the Tanker Pro uniquely its own. We've paired the Tanker Pro 2.0 with our brand new and exclusive Ember Wax Flesh from Horween that nearly seems to glow. This vibrant new offering is only available at NYX. It has hues that go from deep oranges to bright yellows that will continue to evolve and transform its color with wear like a smoldering fire. Ooh, I like that. Oh wow. Lead time is 18 to 35 weeks. Crazy. But the good news is, if you didn't get in on that, NYX still has a Wicket & Craig Tanker MTO currently available. And yet, for the Tanker Pro, you could do the build your own version as well. And you could just customize it from top to bottom. You could choose 8-inch or 10-inch shaft. These are going to be an 8-inch shaft. I could now eyeball that accurately. Whereas mine are going to be the NYX shaft is 8 inches from the top of the heel to the top of the opening. But overall, it's 9.5 inches tall. My tankers are almost 11 inches tall. Mine are 9 inches from the top of the heel to the shaft opening. And the originals are 9 inches, 9.5. Yeah, NYX, you could choose the last you want to have it on. You can choose the leather. They have a whole slew of leathers, bisons, waxed fleshes, Dublins. You can have a pull loop on the back. You can choose between soft toe, elastic toe. You know the drill. You choose the outsole. So yeah, let's get a look at these bad boys a little closer. So yeah, we discussed the issues with the instep strap there. Yeah, I could see these buckles are really good on my backpacks. They're very hardy, very robust. I get them from Buckle Guy. They're about $4 for one of these, so they're not cheap. So if you imagine, I have a whole thing full of these beneath my workbench. There's about $500 worth of roller buckles in there. This stuff ain't cheap, folks, but they are very hardy, very robust. I could see how a pant leg could get stuck on these. They are heavy as well, whereas the newer version, they look to be much lighter weight. My one complaint about these Eastmans was that the ankle strap doesn't wrap around twice like you see on the originals here, or what I believe are originals. John Lofgren actually reached out to me after I released that video, and he actually based this Eastman model off of a different Tanker boot. He used a different example. These, I don't know where these came from. I don't know if these are Daners or what, but I have other Tanker boots. I did this other video on these. These are also technically considered tankers. These are what I have come to call the cavalry tankers because they do have this lace system down here and enclosure adjustment fastenings on the shaft. So the enclosure strap doesn't wrap around the shaft. And they also have a perforated cap toe, which again is an officer's cavalry tanker boot. Very different from the later developed World War II tanker boot. And then I hear you asking, guys, what's the difference between an engineer boot and a tanker boot? Well, the answer is there's no difference at all. No, they are basically the same thing. The main difference obviously being the enclosure strap that wraps around the ankle, and also the tanker boot has a tongue, specifically a gusseted tongue. A engineer boot has no tongue whatsoever. So that's probably the biggest difference. In terms of how they wear, they actually kind of feel the same on foot. We're talking about similar shaft lengths, similar lasts involved, similar outsoles and everything. But yeah, main difference though, tongue, no tongue. wraparound enclosure strap and standard ankle adjustment strap at the top of an engineer. But if you knocked me out and pulled my tanker boots off and then replaced them with engineer boots and I woke up delirious and started walking around, I wouldn't think anything was weird. I'd be like, yeah, I'm still wearing the same boots I got knocked out in. So the difference mostly is aesthetic. In terms of feel, yeah, you could adjust this, and yeah, it feels a little different than an engineer, which is the opening is sort of fixed and doesn't really change much, but ultimately we're splitting hairs. So yeah, so I could see that this Nix boot, tanker boot, it's overbuilt. They're not going for refined or elegant. They're going for chunky, clunky, robust aesthetics, and they definitely succeed. I can see that this instep strap might have been a design flaw, but the rest of it, I could see how when you're dealing with a tanker boot, if this thing was all covered in mud, you'd still be able to maneuver your way in and out of it very easily. Whereas when we're talking about a lace-up boot, no way. If you got mud caked all over a standard lace-up, you can't, and especially combine that with factors like your hands being cold, there's no way you're getting those boots off. You need to get to, like, next to a fire, warm up, try your best to get the gunk and the mud off your boot, and then try to get the laces out, and then you got problems with dirt being on the inside. Whereas with a tanker boot, it doesn't matter how much mud and gunk is on there. With the gusseted tongue, no mud's getting on the inside of the boot, so there's no risk of that. And then these beefy straps, or belts that they call them, are super easy to maneuver even when they're covered in mud and dirt. So yeah, and I'm just looking at small details like this. This strap keeper piece here is very thick, very big, very beefy. Whereas on the Eastmans, they have the strap keepers, and you can see they're just small and refined. And this is cognac horsehide, so it's real smooth, Italian veg tan, beautiful. So yeah, you can see the strap keepers on these. They're just small, elegant. Same with the buckles. Now, that's not something that I appreciated at first, but now after seeing a really heavy-duty overbuilt one, I do now appreciate that. Not to mention, they seem to have left a lot of excess floppy strap flopping around, whereas on mine I could barely, my Eastman, I could barely get them to close on the second hole from the last on these, and then this strap just barely slides into that. So they really weren't, the Eastmans really weren't giving you much excess wiggle room. As you can see, when they're fully enclosed, you don't have much strap protruding out. Now, that is a good and a bad thing. Sometimes I could only get it to the last hole, depending on how swollen I am. So there's not a whole lot of maneuverability with the Eastman design, but that said, I do appreciate the elegance, refined design that these offer. Would I like a little extra length on the straps? Maybe, but that said, if I'm being objective, they are perfectly sized straps for the size of the boot. Perfectly sized. The Nix, I'd say a little oversized, but my buddy Joe Copeland, he's wearing a 12.5 Triple E, absolute monster boots right here. I love them. And yeah, this leather, this Chromexcel that they built this on is 7.25 ounce. These Eastmans and cognac horsehide are 2.25 ounce. With lining, we land at 5.75 ounce on the upper. And the originals, 2.25 ounce, about 8 ounces thick with the lining on the uppers. So, but yes, once again, huge thanks to my buddy Joe for routing me these to review. This is a really fun video. I love taking a look at history. I love tracking designs throughout history and seeing how they evolve over time. This is a tricky pattern, so kudos to Nix and Carl Morawski for refining that pattern. Looks like their newer version is a lot more dialed in. But that said, this version still absolutely killer. Absolutely love it. As always, I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments section below. If you're a flat earther like me, leave me your when you realized finally that the earth was flat. When was your aha moment? Mine was, I was on a plane ride, right? And I noticed that the windows are concave. And I realized they make the windows concave like that to trick the passengers into seeing a curved horizon. Can you believe that? There is no lengths that these round earthers will go to try to fool us. But thankfully, we're smarter than all of them. All right, anyways, enough of that nonsense. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'm Dale's Leatherworks. End of transmission.